Joining me now, Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, who also sits on that Foreign Relations Committee as well, Republican. Great to see you. So I think you could hear some of the conversation that we just had, that I had with Senator Shaheen. I want to start off, if we can, where she hit a point with me, and that was the Iran deal. And she says, oh, no, there were never any side deals. I've had lawmaker after lawmaker say the opposite of that. Where is she coming from?
Well, you're exactly right, Harris. There were side deals. We finally found out about them. I think President Trump was absolutely correct to pull us out of the entire Iran deal. I think that's going to come up today in the hearings with Secretary Pompeo. I'm looking to ask him about Iran. I'm also interested in asking him about his trip to North Korea after the Singapore summit. And then I want to ask him about some of the things that happened with the meeting in Helsinki between the president and Vladimir Putin.
And, you know, Senator Shaheen, and thank you for answering back on the side deals, because, you know, it's hard to prove a negative. So what she's saying is, no, they didn't exist. But what do you say to the people who actually saw them? That gets complicated. But let's move on. So you're going to ask a series of questions as you just laid it out. Senator Shaheen wants the American interpreter. And you say what?
No, I think that's unnecessary. Some of the senators will be playing to the camera. I'm going to be looking for information. I'm going to be looking for updates on what's happening today, what's happening now. You know, when you do hear that the Russian ambassador is saying that there were some decisions made about a future nuclear treaty, I have the questions about that and want to make sure that from Secretary Pompeo where we stand with that, because we do know that Russia has been cheating on the INF, the intermediate weapons into with the nuclear treaty. We know that the New START treaty was a terrible treaty that President Obama got us into. So I want to specifically talk about that as well, and we'll ask those questions specifically regarding Russia and the meeting with in Helsinki.
Right, and as I said to the senator who just joined us, Shaheen, obviously Russia is going to play, right? They're going to come out of that meeting. They know that that was a private meeting and just the two interpreters were there with the President of the United States. They know what was talked about, Putin and his team. And of course, they're going to leverage that and talk up and say things happen. So you on Capitol Hill are yoked together politically on finding out what exactly is the truth. As we move forward, though, the second summit, this is an opportunity with Secretary Pompeo to not just find out about the Russia, but also the North Korea second summit potentially.
Well, I'm going to ask specifically about that of Secretary Pompeo, because right now I have some concerns that both Russia and China are working to undermine the sanctions against North Korea. Remember, it's the sanctions and the tough talk and action by President Trump that got North Korea to the table in the first place. It's what got their attention. But it does seem that both China and Russia are supplying North Korea with energy, with oil, in an effort to undermine the sanctions. So I want to dig into that. But it does seem to be at least a sliver of good news coming out of North Korea. So I'm looking for that update with regard to some of the missiles that seem to be taken away and that the effort is actually there to denuclearize at least the first step of North Korea.
Senator, there is, a play at hand, if you will, by the Democrats. They're handed something when the president meets privately like this for more than 2 hours with an adversary in Russian Vladimir Putin, the president. And so would you want there to be a difference in the second summit, that there be more people in the room?
Well, you know, I think there was a story about when Ronald Reagan met with a former Soviet leader, and there were all this criticism of it. But Reagan knew what he was doing. President Trump is a man of action, of results. When you take a look at what the president is doing with regard to Russia, with military weapons to Ukraine, so Russia can be pushed back in eastern Ukraine, with deploying Patriot missiles into Poland so they can be used as a defense against Russia. I think the president is on the right track, and I think his tough talk with NATO, about specifically Germany, about the dependence of Germany on Russian energy sources, this Nord Stream 2 pipeline. I think the president is right. We cannot allow our NATO friends to become more dependent on Russia. I think the president is very clear-eyed about that.
You know, some political observers and military observers as well look at Secretary of State Pompeo as the right guy to get certain things done. In fact, a lot may hinge on his ability to do that. What do you say about that?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. You know, when Secretary Pompeo, who was, number one in his class at West Point, then head of the CIA, when he went to North Korea after the the Singapore summit, and they made some comments about was he a gangster making demands? I think that guy that was first in his class at West Point showed up and said, look, you're dealing with President Trump now. This is not President Obama. You better take this thing seriously. President Trump means what he says. There are going to be consequences if you don't eliminate these nuclear weapons. And I think that took North Korea back. And I think it was because of the reputation that President Trump has as a man of action and results. That's what made the difference.
Real quickly, we're going to toggle back to Russia before I have to let you go. Senator Barrasso, no doubt the topic of Russian meddling in our election will come up. And as we look forward, how to keep it from happening again. So we're seeing some things happen legislatively on Capitol Hill. But specifically, what went down in the summit with that topic will no doubt come up with the Secretary of State today.
Well, I expected it will, and Secretary Pompeo has been very clear. Russia has been involved in meddling in elections in the United States in the past and will try to do it again. We've seen Russia try to undermine NATO and undermine democracy. We've seen their involvement in elections in England, in France, in Germany. It's what Vladimir Putin does. He's cunning, he's opportunistic, he's aggressive. That's what we're dealing with, and I think we're very clear-eyed about that.
All right, Senator Barrasso from the great state of Wyoming. 3 p.m. today is the appointment when you start to ask the questions of Secretary Pompeo. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thanks, Harris.